5 minutes after I sent a message from my husband's phone, the doorbell rang. Not a soft ring. Not the kind a neighbor gives when she's dropping off mail. It was sharp, impatient, almost desperate. I stood in the hallway with my hand on the wall, feeling every year of my 58 years settle into my knees. I had sent only 6 words. Come over, she's gone. I thought I was about to meet the woman who had been sneaking around with my husband. I thought I was finally going to look betrayal in the face. But when I opened that door, the woman standing on my porch wasn't wearing lipstick or perfume or guilt. She was pale, shaking, and holding a thick folder against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Before I could say a word, she looked past me into the house and whispered, "Where's David? He said it was urgent." That was the moment I realized I had not set a trap. I had sprung one. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm a retired U.S. Army logistics officer, and for most of my adult life I was proud of being a woman who did not panic. In the Army, panic gets people hurt. You learn to count supplies twice. You learn to read the room before you speak. You learn that a missing number on a form can become a missing meal, a missing shipment, a missing piece of equipment someone was depending on. For 22 years I lived by discipline. Then one Saturday morning in my own house I forgot all of it. David and I had been married 34 years. We had raised 2 children, buried 3 parents between us, survived deployments, layoffs, surgeries, and the long, quiet stretch that comes after the children leave home. Our son lived in North Carolina with his wife and 2 boys. Our daughter was in Colorado, busy with work and her own family. I loved them, but I missed the noise they used to bring into the house. After retirement, the silence got louder. David was 61, still broad-shouldered, still handsome in that steady Midwestern way. He volunteered with a veterans support program, fixed things around the house, and claimed he was keeping busy. I worked part-time as an administrator at a small hospital outside Dayton, mostly because I needed purpose. I told people I liked staying active, and that was true. But it was also true that I did not know what to do with all the quiet spaces in my marriage. David and I were not cruel to each other. That might have been easier to understand. We were polite. We asked about appointments. We discussed groceries. We reminded each other about oil changes, church events, prescription refills. But somewhere along the way, our conversations had become reports instead of connection. Then I noticed the phone. At first I made excuses. Everyone carries a phone these days. Everyone texts. Everyone checks messages too often. But David guarded his like it held state secrets. If he walked into the garage, the phone went with him. If I entered the room while he was typing, his thumb moved quickly and the screen went dark. At night I would wake to the faint blue glow beside him. When I asked who needed him at midnight, he would say, "Just someone from the veterans group." Then came the cologne. A new bottle, not the drugstore kind I usually bought him at Christmas, but something expensive in a dark glass container. Then a new shirt. Then a haircut he did not mention. Then errands that lasted too long. I hated myself for noticing. At my age, jealousy feels embarrassing. You think you should have outgrown it, like miniskirts or staying up past midnight for no reason. I told myself not to be foolish. I told myself David was a good man. But suspicion is not loud at first. It is quiet. It sits beside you at breakfast. It follows you into the laundry room. It waits until your husband smiles at a message he will not explain, and then it whispers, "There it is." That Saturday morning, David was in the shower. Steam had fogged the bathroom mirror. I was putting towels away when I saw his phone on the counter. For once he had forgotten it. I looked at it, then looked away. Then the screen lit up. One message. Last night meant everything to me. I froze. The words seemed to burn through the glass. My hand went cold around the towel I was holding. Last night. Everything. To me, I could hear the shower running steady and careless while my whole life tilted sideways. I should have waited. I should have walked into that bathroom and said, "David, explain this." Instead, I picked up his phone. The passcode was our anniversary. It had always been our anniversary. I opened the message thread with shaking fingers. I saw a name I didn't recognize. Emily. My chest tightened. Without reading more, without thinking like the woman I had spent a lifetime becoming, I typed the cruelest trap I could imagine. "Come over, she's gone." Then I pressed send. The second I did it, shame rushed through me. But not enough to stop me. I deleted the notification, placed the phone back on the counter, and walked downstairs like a thief in my own home. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. By the 4th minute, my anger had begun turning into fear. At the 5th minute, the doorbell rang. And when I opened the door, the woman on my porch looked at me with frightened eyes and said, "Please tell me David's here. My mother's alone. Emily's words didn't make any sense. My mother's alone. I had spent the last 5 minutes preparing myself to confront my husband's secret lover. Instead, a frightened young woman stood on my porch, looking as though she had driven through every red light in town. She wasn't dressed for a romantic visit. Her brown hair had been pulled into a loose ponytail that was already falling apart. She wore faded blue jeans, a gray sweatshirt, and comfortable walking shoes. There wasn't a trace of makeup on her face. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much in weeks. Most striking of all was the thick manila folder clutched against her chest. It was stuffed with paperwork. Not flowers. Not a gift. Paperwork. "David told me to come," she said again, her breathing uneven. "Please, is he here?" Every ounce of anger I'd been carrying suddenly collided with confusion. "No," I answered carefully. "He's upstairs." Relief flooded her face. "Oh, thank goodness." Then she looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, you must be Rachel." My heart skipped. "You know my name." She smiled weakly. "Of course." That wasn't the answer I expected. I had imagined a woman who didn't know I existed. A woman living inside a lie. Instead, she spoke my name as naturally as if we'd already met. "I'm Rachel," I said anyway. She nodded politely. "I know." Something felt wrong. Not suspicious. Wrong. Like I had walked into the middle of a conversation that had started long before I arrived. "I'm Emily." The name hit me immediately. Emily, the name on the text message. The woman who had written, "Last night meant everything to me." Without realizing it, my expression hardened. Emily noticed. Did I come at a bad time?" I opened the screen door a little wider. "You'd better come inside." She stepped into the entryway, wiping her shoes carefully on the mat before entering. That simple gesture caught my attention. Most people rushing through an emotional situation don't stop to wipe their shoes. She did. She looked around our living room with quiet curiosity, almost respectfully. Family photographs covered one wall. Pictures of our children, our grandchildren, army retirement ceremonies, Christmas dinners. Emily studied them for only a second before looking away. "You have a beautiful home." The compliment sounded genuine, not manipulative. Still, I refused to let my guard down. "Sit." She sat on the edge of the couch without leaning back. The folder remained in her lap. I stayed standing. "How long have you known David?" "A little over a year." The answer landed like a punch. A year. An entire year. "And what exactly is he to you?" Emily looked surprised by the question. "I don't..." She stopped. Then she looked down at the folder. "I guess that's complicated." Complicated. My stomach tightened. Of course it was. Nothing about an affair is ever simple. I folded my arms. "I saw your message." Her eyebrows pulled together. "My message. Last night meant everything to me." For a long moment she simply stared at me. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of embarrassment, she looked confused. "I don't understand." "You sent it." "Yes. So explain it." Emily blinked several times. "I don't know what you think is happening." "I think you're texting my husband." "I am. I think you came here because I invited you." "You did." "I think my husband has been lying to me for months." The room fell completely silent. Emily looked as if she had suddenly lost the ability to speak. Finally, she whispered, "What?" Before I could answer, footsteps echoed overhead. David. The shower had stopped. He was getting dressed. Emily instinctively stood. "I should explain everything." I laughed bitterly. "I'd love to hear that." She shook her head. "No, not like this." Then, to my complete surprise, she reached into the folder and carefully removed several documents. "I wasn't coming here for..." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Whatever you think." She handed me the top page. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't a greeting card. It was a hospital invoice. Behind it came another document. An insurance denial. Then a mortgage statement. Then medical records. I stared at the stack. None of it fit the story I had spent months creating inside my head. "What is all this?" I asked quietly. Emily swallowed. "It's my mother's." Before I could ask another question, David appeared at the bottom of the staircase. His hair was still damp. He smiled automatically. "Rachel, have you seen my..." Then he saw Emily. The smile vanished. His eyes dropped to the paperwork in my hands. Then they moved to his phone sitting on the hallway table. For a single second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. David looked directly at me. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Rachel?" He paused. "Did you answer a message on my phone?" David's question hung in the hallway like a match held too close to dry paper. I still had Emily's hospital invoice in my hand. The paper had gone soft where my fingers were gripping it too tightly. "Yes," I said. David closed his eyes for half a second. Not long. Just enough to tell me he was trying not to react too fast. Emily looked between us. Wait, Rachel sent that message. David didn't answer her. He kept looking at me. "You wrote, 'Come over, she's gone.'" My face burned. I saw her text. Emily's mouth opened a little, then shut again. David walked slowly into the living room, still barefoot from the shower, a towel draped around his neck. Under any other circumstances, he would have looked ordinary, almost harmless. But in that moment, every step he took felt like judgment. I lifted the invoice. "What is this, David?" He glanced at the papers, then at Emily. "Emily is your mother alone right now." That was not the question I expected. Emily swallowed. "Mrs. Alvarez from next door is with her, but I was supposed to meet the hospice coordinator at 10. David looked at the clock on the mantel. It was 9:47. His face changed. "Not guilty." Alarmed. "Emily, why did you come here?" She held up her phone. Her hand shook. "Because your message made it sound urgent." David turned toward me then, and for the first time that morning, I saw something close to pain in his eyes. "Rachel," he said quietly, "what have you done?" The words hit harder than anger would have. I tightened my arms across my chest. "Don't you dare make this about me. I found a message on your phone saying last night meant everything to her." Emily flinched at that. David rubbed both hands down his face. "Sit down, both of you." "I'm not one of your soldiers," I snapped. "No," he said. "You're my wife, and I should have treated you like one." That stopped me. Emily sat first, folding herself onto the edge of the couch. I stayed standing a few more seconds just to prove I could. Then my knees betrayed me, and I lowered myself into the chair by the window. David picked up the mortgage statement from the coffee table. Emily's father was Michael Carter. The name meant nothing to me at first. Then, David looked at me in a way I hadn't seen in years, the way he used to look before telling me something from his service days. He was in my unit, Kuwait, early 90s. Emily's head turned sharply. "You knew my dad?" David nodded. "I knew him well." Her lips parted. The folder slid slightly in her lap. David's voice dropped. "Your father pulled me out of a fuel storage fire after a generator blew. I had smoke in my lungs and couldn't find the door. He came back in when he didn't have to." Emily pressed her hand over her mouth. I looked down at the invoice again. Suddenly the paper felt heavier. "When Michael died," David continued, "I went to the funeral. Your mother was holding you. You were maybe 2 years old." Emily's eyes filled. "I promised her if she ever needed help, she could find me." The living room became terribly still. Outside, a mower started somewhere down the street. The normal sound made everything inside our house feel even more unreal. David set the mortgage paper on the table. A little over a year ago, Emily contacted the Veterans Support Office. She didn't know me. She was asking about survivor benefits and medical assistance for her mother. Emily whispered, "I didn't know who he was until later." I recognized the last name David said. "Then I recognized your mother's name." I stared at him. "So you've been helping her?" "Yes." "With medical bills?" "Yes." "Insurance?" "Yes." "The house?" He nodded. I looked at Emily. "And last night?" She wiped under one eye with her sleeve. "We got an appeal approved. The one they denied twice. It means Mom can stay in the house while hospice starts." Her voice broke on the last word. "I texted him because I was grateful, that's all. I didn't think how it sounded." I sat there hearing every foolish thought I'd had for months collapse one by one. The cologne, the errands, the late calls, the guarded phone. They had not been proof of romance. They had been proof of secrecy. And secrecy, I realized, could still wound a marriage even when it wasn't hiding sin. I looked at David. "Why didn't you tell me?" He didn't answer quickly. "That scared me more than any confession." Finally, he said, "Because your mother was declining. You were exhausted. Every week it was another appointment, another medication change, another call from your sister crying because she couldn't handle things." I looked away. "I thought I could carry this one thing without adding to you. That wasn't your decision to make." "I know." His answer was immediate. No defense. No excuse. And somehow that made my throat tighten. Emily stood suddenly. "I have to go. I need to get back to Mom." David reached for his phone. "I'll call hospice. We can still." Before he could finish, Emily's phone rang. All three of us froze. She looked at the screen. Her face went white. "It's Mrs. Alvarez," she answered with a trembling hand. "Hello." For a moment she didn't speak. Then the folder slipped from her arm and hit the floor papers, scattering across our rug. "Mom," she whispered. David stepped toward her. Emily looked at me with eyes I will never forget. Then she said, "She's on the floor." Emily was out the door before I could bend down for the scattered papers. David grabbed his keys from the hallway table, still moving with the quick calm of a man who had handled emergencies before. "Rachel, call 911, he said. "I'm coming with you." He stopped just long enough to look at me. There was no anger in his face now, only urgency. "Then call from the car." We followed Emily through the front yard. She was already backing out of the driveway so fast her tires scraped the curb. David opened the passenger door of our SUV and I climbed in with my hands shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone. The dispatcher asked for the address. I looked at David. He gave it without hesitation. That hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. He knew Emily's address by heart. I repeated it into the phone, then stayed on the line while David drove. The whole ride took 7 minutes. 7 minutes is not long unless you are trapped inside your own consequences. I watched mailboxes blur past. A woman walking a small white dog turned her head as we passed. Somewhere a church bell rang 10 o'clock. Normal life kept happening. And I sat there thinking I sent the message. I pulled her away. When we reached Emily's neighborhood, an ambulance was already parked crookedly in front of a small brick ranch house. Emily stood on the porch with both hands pressed to her mouth while 2 paramedics moved inside. David was out of the car before the engine fully stopped. I followed, but slower. For the first time that morning, I was afraid to enter a house. Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor, stood near the door in a pink cardigan, crying quietly. She was trying to get to the bathroom, she told Emily. I only stepped into the kitchen to warm the soup. "I'm so sorry." Emily nodded, but she wasn't really hearing. Inside, her mother lay on a narrow hallway floor wrapped in a blanket, while the paramedics worked around her. She was tiny, with silver hair spread against the linoleum, and one hand curled near her chest. Her eyes were open. That was the only thing that kept me standing. Mom, Emily knelt beside her. "I'm here." Her mother turned her eyes toward her and the smallest smile touched her mouth. "Took you long enough," she whispered. Emily broke down. Not loudly. Just one sharp breath, then tears. David stepped back to give them space. I stood near the kitchen doorway feeling like an intruder. A paramedic asked questions. Medication list. Diagnosis. Last meal. Any fall history? Emily answered what she could, but her voice kept catching. Then David quietly opened a drawer near the refrigerator and pulled out a folder. "Medical information is here," he said. Again, he knew. The paramedic nodded and took it. I looked at my husband standing in that little kitchen barefoot in slip-on shoes, because he had left home so quickly handing over information that helped save time. And I understood something painful. He had not been sneaking into another woman's life. He had been holding up a family that was falling apart. The paramedics decided to transport Emily's mother for evaluation. Nothing looked broken, but she was weak, dehydrated, and frightened. As they wheeled her out, Emily walked beside the stretcher, holding her mother's hand. At the ambulance door, she turned back. "David, the hospice coordinator." "I'll call," he said. "Go with your mom." Then Emily looked at me. Not cruelly, not even with blame. But her eyes were red, and that was enough. "I shouldn't have left," she said. The words landed exactly where they belonged. After the ambulance pulled away, David and I stayed on the sidewalk. For a while, neither of us spoke. Mrs. Alvarez went back inside with a tissue in her hand. A sprinkler clicked in the yard next door. Finally, I said, "This happened because of me." David stared down the street. "No, your message didn't make her mother fall." But it pulled Emily away. He didn't deny it. That silence was harder than any accusation. Back at Emily's house, David spent nearly an hour on calls. Hospice, attorney, veterans office, a financial counselor who sounded irritated until David lowered his voice and said, "A medical emergency happened. We need to reschedule." I sat at Emily's kitchen table staring at a mug that said, "World's Best Mom." When David finally hung up, he looked tired in a way I had not seen before. "The hospice meeting can be moved to Monday," he said. "The account authorization is delayed but not lost." I nodded. "That's good." He sat across from me. "No, Rachel, it's lucky." I looked up. There it was. Not cruelty. Truth. "I know." My voice came out small. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the table. "I should have told you." "Yes." "And you should have asked me before answering my phone." "Yes." For the first time all day, we were not defending ourselves. We were telling the truth. When Emily returned from the hospital that evening, her mother was stable. Exhausted, bruised, but stable. Emily found us still at the kitchen table. She looked at David first, then at me. "I'm sorry I came to your house like that." I stood. "No, I'm sorry you had to." She held my gaze for a moment. Then she said quietly, "I don't hate you, Rachel. But I was scared today, really scared." "I know." And I can't have more confusion around my mother right now. You won't. I wanted to promise more, but promises felt too cheap after what I'd done. That night, David and I drove home in silence. When we pulled into our driveway, the porch light was still on. The same doorbell waited beside the door. The same hallway. The same house, but nothing felt the same. Inside, David picked up his phone from the table and held it for a moment. Then he set it between us. I don't want locks and secrets anymore, he said. I nodded, relieved. Then he added, but I also don't know how to trust you with what's unlocked. And that was when I realized the emergency was over. But my marriage might not be. For 3 days after that, David slept on his side of the bed like a man keeping a respectful distance from a cliff. He was polite. That almost hurt more than anger. He made coffee in the morning. He asked if I needed anything from the store. He kissed my cheek before leaving for the veteran's office, but the kiss felt careful, like something fragile being set on a shelf. On the 4th morning, I found him in the garage sorting through old cardboard boxes. What are you looking for? I asked. He didn't turn around right away. Michael Carter's funeral program. I stood in the doorway wearing my robe and slippers, feeling suddenly small. Why? David opened another box. Emily's mother asked if I had any pictures of him from service. I waited for him to ask for help. He didn't. So I stepped into the garage anyway. For 20 minutes we searched in silence. Dust floated in the beam of light coming through the small window. Somewhere down the street a garbage truck groaned and clanked. Finally I found a faded envelope labeled Kuwait. Inside were photographs creased at the edges. Younger men in uniforms, sunburned faces. David with darker hair. And beside him a smiling soldier with one arm slung over his shoulder. Is this him? I asked. David took the photograph. His thumb paused over Michael's face. Yeah, he said softly. That's him. Something in his voice broke the last piece of pride I had been carrying. I want to help, I said. He looked at me. With Emily. With all of it. His expression stayed guarded. Rachel, I know I don't get to fix one mistake by suddenly becoming useful. He said nothing. But I spent 22 years organizing chaos for the Army. Medical forms, benefits, paperwork, appointment logs. I can help without getting in the way. David looked back at the photograph. Then he nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But permission. That was enough. The next few weeks were humbling. I sat at Emily's kitchen table with binders, sticky notes, prescription lists, hospice contacts, and insurance letters spread in front of me. Her mother, Mrs. Carter, rested in a recliner by the window with a crocheted blanket over her knees. The first day I came, Emily was polite but careful. She offered coffee. I declined. She asked if I needed a pen. I had 3. For most of the afternoon, we spoke only about paperwork. Then Mrs. Carter looked over and said, Rachel, honey, are you always this nervous? Emily froze. David coughed into his hand. I looked down at my color-coded folder tabs and laughed despite myself. Only when I deserve to be. Mrs. Carter smiled. Well, deserving it doesn't mean you have to drown in it. That was the first time Emily looked at me without hurt filling her whole face. Not warm exactly, but softer. By the end of the month, the hospice care was properly arranged. The delayed authorization went through. The Veterans Organization helped reduce 2 medical bills. A local attorney found a way to protect the house long enough for Mrs. Carter to remain there safely. One afternoon after David left to take a call, Emily and I stood together at the sink, washing coffee mugs. She handed me one without looking at me. I was angry at you, she said. I know. I kept thinking, what kind of woman sends a message like that? I dried the mug slowly. The kind who was scared and too proud to admit it. Emily turned off the water. I was scared too, that day, when Mom fell. Her voice thinned. I know. She looked at me then. I don't want that day to be the thing between us forever. The breath I released felt like I had been holding it for weeks. Neither do I. She gave me a small smile. It wasn't dramatic. No tears. No embrace. Just a small mercy in a quiet kitchen. That is how healing usually comes, I think. Not like thunder. Like a cup being handed across a sink. David and I healed slowly, too. We started sitting on the porch again after dinner. At first, we talked about safe things, weather, groceries, the neighbor's new fence. Then, little by little, we talked about the real things. Loneliness. Retirement. My mother's decline. His need to be useful. My fear that I had become invisible. His fear that telling me one more problem would break me. One night, he reached for my hand and said, I should have let you be my partner. I squeezed his fingers. And I should have asked before I accused you in my heart. Months later, Mrs. Carter passed peacefully in her own bedroom with Emily holding one hand and David holding the other. I stood at the foot of the bed quietly praying for a woman I had almost failed before I ever knew her. At the funeral, Emily asked me to sit with the family. David glanced at me when she said it. This time his eyes were not guarded. They were grateful. Looking back, I don't call what happened a simple misunderstanding. That would be too easy. It was a warning. Secrets can wear the face of kindness. Suspicion can wear the face of self-protection. And both can damage the people we love. I learned that trust is not built by never asking questions. Trust is built by asking them before fear answers for us. So, if this story reminded you of someone you love, maybe today is the day to have the conversation you've been avoiding. Not with accusation, not with pride, just honesty. And if stories about family forgiveness, consequences, and second chances matter to you, I hope you'll share your thoughts, pass this along to someone who might need it, and come back for the next story. Because sometimes the lesson that saves us begins with the mistake we wish we had never made.